speak to me that way. You should respect your elders.
Respect is earned, lady.
I want to speak to your manager.
r/entitled parents. Our story we'll be reading today, You Can't Stop Stupid 2, Booze, Brawl, and Bullhorns, from user DFatman. Now, we've read a few of DFatman's stories before, and they've never disappointed. So if you stick around till the end of this video, I guarantee you will not regret it. Thank you so much to DFatman for letting us read your stories. And if you're an author who would like to hear your stories on the channel, please submit them to the r/Mr. Reddit subreddit. And welcome to the newest members of the Re-Army, Thomas, Shadowstalker, and Marquise. And if you're new, join the Re-Army by subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss a thing. You Can't Stop Stupid 2, Booze, Brawl, and Bullhorns. Hello everyone, it's your large, rotund, 2-ton Re-Army security guard here, DFatman, back with another set of stories of the entitled variety. As stated before, my previous warnings still apply here, and I'm having someone help me catch all of my mishaps and mistakes, who has added his own comments with these throughout the story. So hopefully this one is a little better than my last two that I will link at the bottom for those who want to read them. I should also warn you that this story does get a little dark at times, so reader's discretion is advised. With that out of the way, a bit of background detail is in order. This 2/3 of this post happened before I was an official security guard. During this time, I was more that odd job kind of guy. The ones that would pick up jobs that are very temporary, that maybe lasts anywhere from a few hours to a few weeks. In this case, it was the former-ish. The job in question was being a door bouncer for a friend's event and club. The location's normal guy had to leave for a personal reason. At the time, I was helping my friend bring in his equipment for the show, as he was playing for a small gig. Like those at nightclubs, just minus the booze, so just about anyone could watch the show. The only rules were that the kids have to be at least 15 and have a parent with him or her, mostly because this was still a late-night place in the roughest part of town and no outside food or drink, which the latter of the two I understood, being of laws and so forth. The only reason I was asked to do this was they needed a guy big enough to block the door and can handle himself if it gets rough. I was told I would get paid the same as the other guy, but in cash, and I would have free drinks all night, which honestly was a bit of a bonus for me, partly because I had little of on-hand cash to enjoy the night with, and trust me, nursing water all night kind of sucks. This way I can still enjoy the music, get my caffeine fix because I totally didn't have a problem, and I get paid for sitting around. Sounds like a triple win to me. So the place opens up and I'm sitting at the door doing my thing, slightly upsetting people who try to come in with drinks. Like, seriously? I've been around the bush with all of the drink tricks, like putting a can of beer in a cup with a lid and trying to sneak it in. About 2 hours roll by, and the music is really jamming and working the door when this father comes up, and for this story, I will call him Mr. Bob. Mind you, this is not the same Bob as the first story, as I try to keep away from the stereotypical names like Chads and Karens when using names for these tellings. Personal preference is all. Well, Mr. Bob decided to walk up with his son. I say walk up, but it was more of a wobble up, as it looked like he was already 3 cases of liquor into a 5-case night. Something I know won't be allowed, because that's just asking for problems, and the owner had told me that if it looked like they would cause a problem, to not let them in. They had one of those, "We have the right to turn people away" signs on the door that was placed right next to me. Not hard to miss either. He comes up, and what I could only guess was a habit, he begins to pull out his wallet.
What? What's the door charge?
As my guess was right, the guy was sloshed off his rocker, and I had already dealt with people like this. For a little bit of context, I'm always the double D for my friends, or designated driver, defender, and some of my friends at the time could be very violent drunks, so you learn how to handle people like this. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't let you in."
What do you mean I can't go in? I have my money right here.
He was waving his wallet around like it was Willy Wonka's golden ticket in my face, as to rub in the fact that he indeed had a wallet. Frankly, I didn't care, and I was getting annoyed. "Sir, I don't care. I cannot let you in. Please go home."
And why the wonk not?
No lie, he literally said wonk. My only guess was that he had a younger kid, and instead of teaching them not to say a curse word, They would train themselves to replace those words with something more age-appropriate and weird. The only reason I jumped to this one is that a few of my friends' parents would do the same thing with younger brothers, and I had been yelled at for using the correct words when I stub a toe and whatnot. About this time, another person comes in and puts his hand on Mr. Bob's shoulder. For the sake of the story, let's call him Jeff. "Dad, leave that guy alone. You've already had too much to drink." That's right, Jeff was Mr. Bob's son. At least I knew someone was responsible enough for the family drunk. Now, I'm not saying drinking is bad, but I would always suggest to drink at home or a friend's house and do it responsibly. Partly because that way you know you can crash there, and it keeps them and you off the streets where it's safe.
No, son, I want in here, and this fat wonka is going to let me in.
The wonk I am. You're not getting in here till you sober up. Yes, I used his word, partly because I am a smart mouth of the idiot variety. I should have known better to do that, but wisdom comes after being taught a lesson the hard way. Something I wish these entitled parents would learn, but sadly, the world doesn't work that way. Regardless, this seemed to enrage Mr. Bob, and well, I will give him this. He has a mean right hook. I should know. I took it face first, no pun intended. Now, something you should know about me. I hate getting hit in the face. If you want to see the saint turn to Satan fast, then you punch him in the face. Well, that or nail him in the royal twins. So he decided to do the first, and I, being a reactionary kind of person in those days, it came with being that fat kid being picked on. I had been beaten up quite a few times when in school, and it didn't take long for me to learn how to protect myself. So, without thinking, I slammed my head into Mr. Bob's face. Lucky for me, I have a rather hard head, because Mr. Bob dropped like a rock. Jeff apologized for his father and dragged him off, and I went back to my seat at the door. It seems because of this, the people that had been waiting for me to let them in kind of dispersed. I don't know if it was because of the drunk or that I had no qualms about taking names. Shortly after this, the owner came out to hand me a refill on my drink that I had asked not too long before this. He had noticed the blood that was starting to drip from my nose. "Here's your... Oh, geez. What happened to your face?" A drunk tried to come in, and he learned the first rule when it comes to me the hard way. First rule? You don't mess with the fat man. Now, you may wonder where the entitled person comes in on this story. Don't worry, I'm getting to it. Well, outside of the drunk one, the next day rolls around, and through my friend who I had helped set up for his show, the club owner wanted to see if I could cover another night for the same pay and all. I said sure, as I needed the cash at the time, and I asked what time I needed to show up. After the details were ironed out, I took my spot outside the door when this lady came up with Jeff from the previous night. For the story, let's call the lady Miss Virago, because I like it better than calling her a Karen. Anyone who doesn't know, Virago is a domineering, violent, or bad-tempered woman. Even though this lady looked like she was trying to pull off that discount store Jersey Shore look, and not in the right way.
Are you the guy that beat up my husband last night?
It depends. Was he drunk and thought he could get his way?
No, it was the well-mannered gentleman that was only asking about the entrance fee before you assaulted him.
I gave her a look of, you can't seriously be that stupid, can you? Before I answer, Jeff spoke up. Mom, I told you that isn't what... Before he could even finish, Miss Virago turned around and gave that
"Shut up!"
pointed finger to her son.
You will not interrupt me when I am talking to the fat waste of space.
I couldn't help but look surprised at this lady. Seriously, this lady not only gave her son that
"How dare you"
attitude, but to insult me within the same few moments.
Now, Tubbo, answer my question.
She demanded, and personally, I was having none of this. Lady, I don't care what kind of high horse you think you rode up on, but what happened last night is between your husband and I. He should count himself lucky I didn't call the cops on him for assault. Your son can attest to that, and if I were you, I would leave now.
How dare you speak to me that way? You should respect your elders.
Respect is earned, lady. I will admit, I let my temper get the better of me, as I said lady, with a lot of venom in my voice. Right about then, the owner of the club stepped out to see what was going on. What's going on out here? Before I can even answer.
Are you his manager?
I'm the owner. Why?
I want this fat waste of space fired for insulting me and attacking my husband last night.
The owner just blinked for a few moments like he was trying to process what was just asked of him. If it's who I think it is, then do you mean the assault your husband did to him and that I have the footage of? Yes, that one. Look, I'm sorry for my mom, was all he got out before his mother decided to interrupt again.
You will not apologize to them.
All I'm thinking at this point is, seriously, lady? Bow out while you still can, because there is no way you can win.
Now I expect you to do your job. Fire this fat piece of human waste and make it up to my husband.
I won't be doing that. Both you and your husband are banned from my club, and I want you to leave before I call the cops and have you removed.
Excuse me? You can't do that.
Watch me. He went back in to make a call, and the only reason I know this was that the cops showed up not too long after. The whole time leading up to this, Miss Virago was trying to get into the building, and I just sat in her way. Because when a fat man decides to be a barricade, he can do a real good job of it. After a bit, I heard the knock at the door behind me, and I stepped out of the way, all to watch the cop step out from inside the club. The owner told me later he had the cop come up from the back, and from what I found out, the cop was someone the owner knew from before he joined the force. So the owner showed the officer the footage from the night before and now. Sadly, this Miss Virago didn't get arrested, but was removed from the grounds. After that, Jeff apologized for his parents and walked off after the officer and Miss Virago. And since I like telling these stories in threes, here's the last one for this post. This one takes place a lot closer to home for me, namely my front yard, and this was quite some years ago. I lived about one street down from a school and still do, so I see a lot of the students walking to and from it. This day, it was a fairly nice day to sit outside. Normally, I would have been sitting on my computer, but I was having it render stuff, and I figured I would just leave it alone and get some fresh air. So I grabbed my Kindle and sat on my porch to read. I was partway through one of my favorite books, The Count of Monte Cristo, by Alexander Dumas. Not an important point, but regardless. While I read, I had my Kindle play music, as it helps me either relax or get in the mood for the scene. In this case, I was listening to my own music, which I will link at the bottom for those that want to listen to it. Regardless, it was about that time for students to get out, and I see a few of them walk down the street. Nothing special happens until this one kid decides to play with my dad's tulips. Now, as I had alluded to in my last post, some of the kids in the area were not the nicest of kids. Egging my car wasn't the worst of it, but I don't think you want to hear about those times. Well, lately some of the kids had taken to picking my dad's flowers, and I asked the kid not to touch the flowers. The kid jumped and saw me before running off. Nothing new, because I've been known to disappear and reappear on people when they least expect it. So I think nothing of it, and throughout the time I sat out front, I told a few others. Now you may be wondering, why did I make it a point to point out the first kid if a few others did the same thing? That's easy, my dear readers, because he returned later with his mother, who for this I will call Mrs. Harridan. Like before, Google it. Editor here. Shall I keep filling these in with the meanings or no? Miss Harridan is the main antagonist of the 2003 comedy film Daddy Daycare. Between the time the kid ran off and reappeared with his mother, my dad had come out and given me a bullhorn that a friend of his was coming by to pick up. She came marching up to me like a woman on a warpath.
Are you the boy that yelled at my son?
No, I'm the guy who asked him to leave the flowers alone.
How dare you tell my son he can't look at your flowers?
I didn't say he couldn't look. I just didn't want him to touch them.
And why not? They are only flowers. You can go to any field and pick one.
Then he can go to any field other than my yard to pick one.
And what if my son wants the ones here?
Then he can take a picture of it and go find another one that looks just like it.
You're going to let my son pick the flowers here?
No.
Excuse me?
She sounded offended by that, and I couldn't help myself. You must be hard of hearing. Here, let me help you. I picked up the megaphone next to me and said through it to her face, I said no. Now get out of my yard. Miss Harridan began to get red in the face and tried to grab the megaphone from my hands, which I just pulled it away out of her reach. Now I suggest you leave.
And why should I?
I smirked like the devil and pulled the bullhorn up to my mouth. Ma'am, I don't care how much you want my fat body. I will not sleep with you. I know, I'm a jerk, but it was so worth it, as the woman turned bright red, giving me the death glare. Still smirking like the devil, I acted like I was about to say something much, much worse. She got the message and stomped off with her son in tow, and I went back to my book. So it goes to show you, if you really want to throw off one of these entitled parents, you've got to turn it on them in a way they can't defend. I figured that this time I would share these stories that I've only told my neighbors and my family with everyone here, since I saw those in the comments of Mr. Reddit's video over my last post. I will admit, you all lifted my spirits that day, as I was having a bit of a rough day. So thank you everyone, I do appreciate it. I have quite a few more of these stories, as well as some of my favorite stories of my own stupidity that I may share. Just the latter, I'm going to have to figure out what kind of tag they are going to need. Any thoughts, everyone? And to Mr. Reddit, thank you for another wonderful reading of my last post, and I hope you enjoy this story as well. I tried my best to omit the bad words in this one again for you. Editor's note. With how much he swears in Discord, and when we game, I can attest, he held back on the curse words quite some bit. To everyone else, don't forget to sub and click those notification bells for Mr. Reddit's videos, so you can prevent those entitled Karens out there from getting what they want. While I may be one large fat obstruction, I can only hold them off for so long, because you can't stop stupid, but you can hold it off for a little while longer. And for those Karens out there, this is one fat Army security guard who has got your numbers and has no problem standing up to you. So come have a go if you think you're hard enough. Thank you for reading. Hope you enjoyed.
Turn on that notification bell for Mr. Reddit's channel, or I'm going to let my son come to your front yard and pick your flowers, even if you don't have any.
And congrats to our Regenerals of the day, That Gamer, Cheyenne, and Karma Akabane. And special thanks to all 8 of my patrons. I really appreciate your guys' support. And if you'd like to support the channel, please do so by becoming a patron today. Link pinned in the comments. That's all for now, but don't be blue. I'll be back soon with more stories for you. Remember to listen to Mr. Reddit every night, so your dreams will be wonderful like you are and bright.